This is verse 55 of chapter 24 of the Holy Quran, which is called Al-Nur, and its English translation is, Allah has promised to those of you who believe and do good that He will surely make them rulers in the earth, as He made those before them rulers, and that He will surely establish for them their religion, which He has chosen for them, and that He will surely give them security in exchange after their fear. They will serve me, not associating aught with me. And whoever is ungrateful after this, they are the transgressors. This is the verse of the Holy Quran which we say promises the coming of the Mujahdids. Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali, in his translation, has translated the word khalifa or khulafa as rulers. But that does not just mean those people who physically rule over us. That also means people who spiritually rule over us. And that is religious leaders. And it is in accordance with this that we said, that the Holy Prophet said, Mujaddids will come and reformers will come, arise amongst the Muslims to carry out whatever reform is needed. And an objection that is frequently raised is this. When the Holy Quran says, today I have perfected for you your religion, what need is there for Mujaddids to come? What need is there for reformers to come? What are they going to reform? Religion, deen, has been perfected. Well, God has perfected religion. But that does not mean to say that our understanding of it and our application of that religion is perfect. And that is what Mujaddids come to reform. And there are many examples of this. And I just want to mention 2 or 3 things that I have come across recently which took place in Dubai. Last year, there was a Norwegian lady. She went to Dubai and she reported to the police that she had been raped. And she expected, as any reasonable person would, that the police would take some action. And they did take some action. They arrested her for having sexual intercourse outside marriage. She was tried because she had gone to the police and said this had happened, and then she was put in prison for 15 months. Correctly, there was an outcry in Norway against or about what had happened. More recently, the same thing has happened to a lady from Austria. She was in Dubai. She reported to the police that she had been raped, and she was arrested. The man whom she accused of having carried out this dastardly deed, he was also arrested. And at one time he said, well, she was drunk and it was by consent. And then he changed his story and said, well, she's a prostitute and she sells her body for money. And the curious thing is, although he made these statements implying that yes, he was involved, only the woman was charged. and she is now going to be put on trial, and she cannot leave Dubai. Some of you may have seen the interview that the Sheikh, the ruler of Dubai, gave to BBC World Service, in which these questions were specifically addressed to him. And he had no answer. There was nothing that he could say to justify the actions of his police. And all that he did was to mumble something about, while they're going to have a look at it and see what can be done to change the law. But his problem is this: according to Sunni interpretation, because there weren't 4 eyewitnesses who actually saw the rape, the man cannot be charged. The woman is charged because she admitted to it. She admitted to having intercourse with a man with whom she wasn't married. So how is he going to change the law? This is their interpretation of the Holy Quran. And of course there is outcry against Islam and women's rights, as I said, in Norway and now in Austria. You know, that brings us to another interesting point, where our Muslim brothers say that in the West there is false propaganda against Islam to denigrate this religion, to bring it into disrepute, and so on and so forth. Let me ask them, what need is there of false propaganda when Muslims themselves are providing the West with publicity material on a plate to use against Islam? The ruler of Dubai did not deny what happened to the woman from Norway. He did not deny, he did not say that she is not in prison. But the question is, how is he going to change the law? How is he going to reform this system? And that is the whole point. That takes us back to the point that reform is needed, not of the religion itself, but of how Muslims understand their own religion and how they apply that religion. You may remember that last year a khutbah was delivered from this mosque which showed that requirement of 4 eyewitnesses is to establish public indecency and not the rape itself. And we have similar laws in England and America and so on, and that is, if someone commits these acts in public, then they are arrested and they are brought before magistrates who punish them. You might remember the man in England who decided that he was going to walk in the nude from John O'Groats to Land's End, and every time he went out and a policeman saw him, he was arrested, he was brought to magistrates, he was either fined or put on probation or put in prison or whatever, and then whenever he came out, off he went again, and so it went on. I don't know whether he made it from one end of the country to the other or not, but the point I'm making is that every society decides what is to be allowed in public and what is not to be allowed in public. And what is not to be allowed in public requires witnesses to establish that public morals were outraged, some indecent act was committed in public, and it is for that 4 witnesses are required by Islam, not for the act of rape itself. I mean, who would commit an act of rape in front of at least 4 witnesses, if not more? So that is one aspect of the reform. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who came as a reformer to reform these ideas and this thinking, he dealt with the issues and problems of his time. Some of those have continued, such as, is Jesus still alive up in heavens? Will he come back one day and show Muslims the right path? Well, if you're going to follow Jesus when he comes back, why don't you follow him now? You might as well do it and join his flock, as the Christians say. He reformed the concept and idea of jihad. What is jihad? When is it to be conducted? Under what conditions and at what time is it to be conducted? And that has still gone on, because we know and we see every day on television that many Muslims still have the wrong or a distorted idea of what jihad is and how and when it is to be conducted and against whom it is to be conducted. And then we have other things. You see, when we say change is needed, when we say revision is needed, when we say reform is needed, we, Lahori Ahmadis, do not exclude ourselves from that. We don't say to others, oh, what you're doing is wrong and that needs changing, but we are perfect. We are not in need of any change at all. We look at things all around us and see how to apply Islam, and we look at the conclusions that some of our elders came to, and we see whether those conclusions are still applicable. One example of that is that about a year or so ago, we revised the English translation of the Holy Quran by Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib, who was our first Amir. And we saw no harm in that, because language has changed, the world has changed, knowledge has advanced. If you are going to say, well, Hazrat Maulana Rahmatullah Alayhi did this work and no one can touch it, then what you are saying is that he is akin to God. God revealed the Quran in Arabic, and what he has done in English is akin to that, and cannot be checked or changed. But the point I'm making is this, that when we talk about reform and change, we apply that to ourselves as much as to the general Muslim public and ideas and concepts that they have and that they propagate and preach over social media and through the newspapers and other means. Because any society that stops looking at itself to see whether it needs to reform and change in the light of current problems and issues and knowledge, eventually becomes irrelevant and it dies. And I would say that for so long as our Jamaat continues to look at itself and others and carries on this system of reform that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, set up, perhaps it may be that there is no need for a new mujaddid to come, because reform is being done. Muslims all over the world, in England, said you can't start Ramadan until you sight moon with your own eyes. You can't have Eid until you sight the new moon with your own eyes. 35 years ago, we said that is not possible. The world has moved on. We can now tell with certainty, more certainty than sighting moon with our own eyes, when Ramadan is going to start and when Eid is going to be. So we are not going to be bound by sight moon with your new moon with your own eye, naked eye. We are going to rely on more certain information, and we are going to announce a year in advance when Ramadan is going to be and when Eids are going to be. And of course there was uproar. They are changing things. they're doing something that the Holy Prophet didn't say. The Holy Prophet said, when you see the moon with your own eye. Well, the question is, what did you expect him to say? That was the only means of finding the new moon. But my point was that here is a reform that was carried out. And it has made it so convenient for people. They can book their holidays for Eid and not miss Eid with their families, as was happening previously. And there are many other things that we have done along the same lines. And the latest of which was the khutbah that was given in this mosque, which suggested that we need to look at the whole issue of how women are treated in Islamic societies, particularly when they want to report crime against them. And we suggested, for example, that use of DNA, which has actually been rejected by Islamic legal courts in certain countries. We said DNA is more reliable than 4 eyewitnesses. Use DNA. We said that 4 eyewitnesses are to establish public acts of indecency, and not whether a rape took place or not. And as I said to you, for so long as just this Jamaat keeps on looking at itself, looking at the world around it, and keeps coming up with solutions to the problems that Muslims are facing in different countries at different times, then the work of reform carries on. And what happened to this lady from Norway, and what happened to this lady from Austria, and in the light of the interview given on the BBC World Service by the Sheikh, I would suggest that our non-Ahmadi brothers urgently need to look at this issue. Because on the VirtualMosque, an item was put up which showed that thousands of even minors are being raped in some Islamic societies, and they have no recourse to law. So when people say why mujaddids are needed, I give you this as one example of why mujaddids are needed and what reform is needed if Islam is to survive in the modern world as a vibrant and as a living religion, not a mere set of rituals that we perform every now and then when we meet together.